Sold like stock under a desert sun. One quiet bid, one long ride home. The border town woke mean. Freight wagons jammed corral rails. Pack mules tied nose to tail. Rifles leaned in pyramids under a split canvas fly that gave no real shade. Dust hung where night riders had pounded in from the agency road, dragging what they caught. Bolters. Det men in irons, 2 Ute boys with cropped hair and her. They called her Apache stock on the handbills, though anyone who had ever stood close to Chiricahua beadwork would have known the cutters hacked her hair blunt and tied trader cloth wrong. Labels sell faster than truth. They hauled a plank stage across whiskey kegs, rang a stovepipe bell for bids, and let the crowd swarm like flies on Camp Sugar. Children crawled the hotel porch rail for a look. Gamblers leaned from upstairs sash windows. A parson stood stiff by the jail door, face set for protest, eyes counting ledger marks. Money changed hands as silver stacks, script chits, whiskey notes, and promises on railroad paper from lines that would never lay iron through this dust. Men priced people where they price mules, weight, teeth, scars, temper. When they jerked her up the step, she did not pull. Raw wrists, ankle scores were rawhide cut deep, an iron hoop braced behind the base of her skull. So she must hold her head high or choke. She chose high. Sweat carved clean tracks down dusted cheeks. Blood flaked under one eye. Someone tried to burn a claim brand at her ankle. The welt blistered crooked when the iron slipped. Over that she had twisted her own bead strand twice. Glass defiance wrapped over ruin. The auctioneer pitched her hard. Camp labor, stock hand, trail wife, scout, wild blood good for spotting sign. Miners howled she could smell silver. A saloon woman shouted she'd paint her and sell drinks. A militia remnant offered to hang her for drill if price fell. Through it she stared past faces, over hats, toward the heat-shimmer ridge beyond town, as if laying range marks for a run no body could make in irons. A boy spat. The gob hit her collar ring and hissed. At the outer ring stood a lean man in alkali-scarred boots and a sweat-faded denim coat. Folks called him Riker's Hand because he kept the Riker spread going after the old man died, and no partner bought him out. Widowed 2 springs. Heard lost a drought. Talked little. When he did, words came slow as pump strokes. He watched shoulders, not faces. Faces preen, shoulders confess, and hers stayed loaded forward, riding weight like a horse waiting gate drop. Not stock, not salvage, alive while waiting for open ground. Bids snapped like grasshoppers in heat. Tin rifles, a string of remounts, a paper deed on played-out diggings. Laughter when a gambler tossed a red silk glove. The lean man lifted 2 folded bank drafts saved for seed and a coil of heavy silver conchos, stripped from the one good saddle he owned. Jeers slowed. Men counted metal. Silence took the pen. Hammer cracked keg iron. Sold. Town rules said property stayed chained until clear of Main Street. He paid the marshal's release fee with the last coin he carried under his belt tongue and waited while a blacksmith drove the collar bolt loose. Iron dropped. Weight left her throat. She swayed once, caught balance, knees locked. She did not thank, none expected. He offered water before papers, before rope, before mount. She drank in 3 measured tilts, eyes over the rim each time. Trust starts where something is offered without demand. He set the cup within reach and turned his back to coil chain, giving her open space if she meant to strike or bolt. She did not move. Choice is a cut line in packed earth. After rain, you can still read where it began. At the hitch rail, he shifted his spare roan, threaded a long rawhide lead from her wrist to his horn, left her hands free. Gasps rolled the crowd. Someone wagered she'd knife him by sundown. He swung up. She vaulted bareback without ass, chin-high, jaw stone. Noon glare burned their backs when they rode out. Town glare fell away to flats stitched with greasewood shadow. Heat shimmered. Air tasted copper and sage dust. Boys threw rocks that dropped short. Ahead lay 3 hard days across dryland to the Red Buttes, where the Riker place squatted around a failing well. He did not speak. She read land by scent and angle, wind off gypsum, vultures riding a thermal, ant trail cutting wheel ruts, and tucked each sign like beads into memory. Mid-afternoon, he saw blood wet through the bead wrap at her ankle. He dismounted, tied the lead light to mesquite, so she could pull free if frightened, and knelt where she could see both hands. He rinsed the welt with canteen water, tore a strip from his own sleeve, packed it soft, rewound the beads loose so air could work. She let him touch no farther. Enough. They moved on long walk pace. Purple storm bulges built on far ranges, but gave no rain. Coyotes tracked shade lanes. Twice she tested slack, easing the lead to feel if he would yank. He never did. Dust poured red along basalt shelves. He chose camp above a wash with brush enough to pick it. Fire small, smoke thin. Beans, a biscuit heel, last town water. He ate turn away so she could eat or not unseen. She took half, hid the rest under coals for morning. Camp sense. When he rolled his blanket, he let the lead lie loose across ground between them. She looped it once round her wrist beneath her body. Insurance, not surrender. Wind swung cold after dark. Stars hammered white. Coyotes yipped the day's bid numbers along the ridge. Far under the soil, some drumbeat memory no white ear heard kept time in her blood. He stared into dead coals, counting what silver bought. No seed money, no hired help, one life that might vanish at dawn. Yet sleep took him without rope checking. Gray light found her still there. Before sun, she crouched at camp edge, lead slack, measuring horizon lines away Scout's red scripture. Run now, and she might gain 2 miles before heat, then none. Her eyes tracked the canteen on his saddle. Only sure water between here and the dry basin. Desert math cut hard. She eased the lead back where it lay and sat through dawn in silence. Coffee boiled thin. He patched a cinch strap. Flame winked off a bead disk at her throat. White center. For Red Wings. Mescalero work he had once seen at San Carlos. Posters lied. Bounty riders took anyone brown enough to sell. Somewhere a band counted missing. Buying one life might make him thief to another grief. He broke camp slow, showing every move, where food stowed, where rifle rode, where spare knife it in boot heel. She marked all. When he gave the roan head, she moved up beside instead of behind. Small shift, long road. Noon glare built ahead. Behind them town sank to a smear. The desert held its breath. Trust had not begun, but the ground between them was no longer owned by the men who bid. Freedom on paper means nothing when the desert is wide and trust is thin. They cleared the last outbuilding, and the town noise snapped shut behind them like a gate. Sun hit clean and hard. The rawhide lead from her wrist to his horn hummed each time the horses stretched. A thin live wire between bodies that shared no language and owed nothing. She kept her chin high, though the collar welt throbbed. He kept his gaze on distance, measuring water, shade, and the way storm haze stacked over far ranges. By mid-mile the road broke into cattle drift, then into wind track. Greasewood and choyaline from years of one-direction weather. A trickle of wagons that cut a shallow rut toward the rail spur northwest. He took the South Fork nobody used. A line of ghost wheel marks shined to clay. She marked that. A man who chose ground away from traffic either hit something or protected it. Heat built. The pony's shoulders darkened with sweat salt. He stopped at noon under a rock blister to slack cinches. Without speaking, he laid out 2 tin cups, 1 canteen, 1 plug of jerky. He stepped back. She drank first, slow, guarded, measuring not the water but whether he would snatch the canteen away. He did not. When he reached for it, she let go without jerk. Small ledger marks of behavior. Trust is long arithmetic. Tracks cross the flats. Mustang to wagon 3 days old. 1 shod mule limping. She slid from her pony, crouched, touched, sniffed, and rose without glance. Scout habits. He filed to move away. Men in saloons had branded her labor. None saw the way she read ground like print. When she mounted, she shifted the rawhide loop to give herself more reach. He noticed, chose not to shorten. Toward evening, thunderhead stacked purple anvils but drifted east. Lightning walked ridges nobody claimed. They rode inside a low red light that made every thorn glow. She studied his gear. Patched rifle scabbard, 2 worn cinch straps spliced with harness lace, a bedroll mended with flower sackcloth printed Riker flower in ghost blue. Riker's hand carried history in rags. She tried the first real test after sundown. Camp made, horses knee hobbled. Fire the size of a boot heel. While he scraped beans from the pot she rolled from her blanket, eased the rawhide off her wrist, and ghosted the shadow. He heard nothing. What woke him was a horse's ears. He did not shout. Instead, he picked up the canteen and set it on a rock halfway between them, then sat with his back to her trail. 10 long breaths. Pebbles shift. She came back, not to him, but to the water. Desert law outranks pride. Later, while stars drilled holes in black, she rose again, not to flee but to walk circles wide of camp counting steps. He watched her silhouette against starlit flats and understood. She was mapping distance in the dark, marking bearings on peaks, building a route if she ever chose to go. He led her. Morning brought heat shimmer and horseflies. Her ankle wound puffed angry. He washed it again, this time mixing a pinch of coffee grounds with water to grit the seep clean. She flinched once, not from pain but from the smell. Roasted bean smoke, a fort smell, white smell. She pulled away. He stopped, bound the beads loose. Respect given buys more ground than coin. Near midday, they met a freight stage tipped on a washbank, team blown, driver cursing axle pins. Men from town recognized the girl and laughed that the ranch hand had bought himself fancy trouble. One asked price to trade. Another said the marshal might yet recall unpaid papers. Riker's hand said nothing. He lifted the broken axle, wedged a limb, hammered the hub home. When the stage rolled free, he waved them on. The men rode off still laughing. None noticed she had slid her knife from the driver's drop tool roll and now held it under her thigh. She did not keep the knife. At the next stop, she laid it point first into the dirt beside his boot while he poured water for the horses. No look, no words. Return of steel equals a mile of earned faith. They skirted alkali basins bright as spilled flour, climbed a shale face, and dropped into a basin of stunted pinyon, where a seep lived under rock. She found it by smell before he did. On her knees, she scraped salt crust, scooped mud, waited for the hole to glass. He let her drink first. When he leaned to fill the canteen, she gestured. 2 fingers west, curved north, signed for another seep farther on. He nodded once. Language enough. That night wind came hard. Sand needled exposed skin. He dropped his slicker over her where she slept rolled tight. She woke, pushed it back halfway, then pulled it over both. Shared cover is treaty. Close to dawn coyotes, set up a racket. One came bold, drawn by jerky scent. She rolled, snatched a fire stick, and pegged it perfect. The animal yelped and bolted. He smiled into the dark, where she could not see. Capable hands change a man's plans faster than love talk. Third morning broke white. The red butte showed. His land began where a split cottonwood forked a dry arroyo. Fence down, sign half shot away, windmill vane hanging one bolt. He halted there, cut the rawhide lead, and hung the strip on the post. If she wished to turn back, that was a place. She sat her pony, staring at the open basin and the thin scatter of buildings beyond. A low house, a lean barn, a dead orchard gray as bone. Then she heeled forward on her own rein. She entered Riker ground as no one's property and did not look back. The ride from sail ring to ranch line took 2.5 days, and all the money he had. It bought a life still ready to leave. The desert would decide whether it stayed. An empty ranch echoes louder than chains. She decides where to set her feet. They topped the last rise mid-morning and saw the Riker place spilled thin across a chalk basin. Low sod house shouldered by add-on boards. Lean barn sunk at one end, windmill tail twisted. Tank dry to a rust ring. Fence laid down in drifts where winter flashwater tore through. Orchard dead. Trunks silvered. Limbs lifted like hands that never got their answer. A grave stake on a rise above the house held a tin heart beaten flat and wired to willow. Sun flashed off it like a signal no one had read in years. He swung down at the yard gate and left choice plain. No lead, no reach. If she meant to turn, the desert lay open behind. She rode through the gap without looking back. That first step under his line set the scale for everything after. The house smelled of dry flour, lamp soot, and memories shut too long. One room tore into another by canvas hangings. A widow's order still clung where his dead wife had left it. Scraps of dress cloth stacked by color. A child's New Testament in Spanish script, though no child lived here now. A comb with hair still caught at the teeth. He did not touch those things when she watched. He stacked seed sacks, scraped mold off a table board, rolled water barrels out to catch next rain that never came. She ranged the yard like stock-checking fence, eyes narrow against light. Counting tools, stock, exits. Corrals held 2 ponies and 1 sway-back mare rib thin. Rotted posts leaned by the forge. Old plow iron had rusted into soil. She squatted, lifted, sniffed, tapped, learning what would hold and what would cut. In the barn loft, she found dried corn stubs and mouse nest in the seed bin. She carried the bin outside, burned the nest, saved 5 sound ears, and hung them under eaves shade where wind might keep mold down. At dusk, he showed her the hand pump. It wheezed air, spat mud, then quit, well dropping. She palmed the pipe, listened. No head pressure. She walked the arroyo in gathering dark, reading land away others read ink. Where wild mustard clung green, she scraped and hit seep mud, cold. She lined the scrape with flat stones, let it glass, cupped water, tasted alkali, judged it drinkable if boiled. He staked canvas under to catch night drip. By morning a basin lay in the arroyo, not much, but wet. Second day she cut the rawhide lead he had used on her wrist and braided it into hobble straps for the mare. The act rewrote history. What bound now served. She trimmed cracked hooves with his draw knife, packed frog rot with dry ash, fed mash soaked soft. By weeks turned the mare could stand full weight. He watched from shade, jaw working, hand still. A man who buries kin learns reverence. He was learning it again beside the barn door. She refused the bed. First night she slept under porch E with saddle for backrest. Faced an open yard. Coyotes came near. She did not start. He set a blanket inside the door anyway. On the 3rd night, wind drove grit. She dragged the blanket in without comment. On the 4th, she moved her things to the far wall where morning light climbed slow. His wife's quilt chest stood there. She never opened it. Respect returned in kind. He never stood over her while she slept. Work drew rhythm. She patched a roof seam with hide glue. He set new teeth in the hay rake. She split mesquite for cook fuel. He strung wire. She marked posts with paired slashes, Apache tally marks counting lengths, so they could space rails even when tired. He copied the mark on the side of the line. Shared measure makes common fence. Some afternoons heat nailed the yard flat, and they worked inside shadow. She sorted seeds she had saved, corn, beans, desert squash, a twist of wild amaranth, and a packet from her medicine pouch. Tiny black seeds guarded like coin. She drew a circle in dust, quartered it, placed each by season. He brought 2 cracked jars, washed them, labeled with charcoal strokes. She corrected by moving his hand. Touch brief, electric, gone. Storm spit came one night. Not rain proper, just sheet flashes and wind. Thunder rolled off the buttes and rattled crockery. In that light, he saw her at the grave stake above the house. Beads in her palm, head bent. He went no nearer. By morning, a small stone ring sat beside the tin heart. 2 graves now. 1 white wet board, 1 circle of rock. Land recorded the change. 3rd week heat rolled, like forge breath. They dragged brush to shade the seep and stretched burlap across trough rims so bees could land. She carved channels fingertip wide, guiding trickle toward 3 shallow beds scratched in the kitchen yard. When wind dried them, she laid flat stones as scales. Moisture held. He watched green thread push dust. Food thinned. She took his short carbine, slung muzzle down the Apache way, and walked out at dawn. By noon she came back with 2 jackrabbits and a sack of prickly pear pads fire-scraped clean. He dressed meat. She boiled pads slick green that cut alkali thirst. Shared work tastes better than bought food. One afternoon, she split her palm driving staples. He washed, wrapped, smeared axle grease when Sal ran out. Hand in his hands, long enough for a heartbeat 10. She went back to wire with blood-dark cloth showing. The dead orchard bothered her. Roots still bit. She climbed, sawed dead tops, cut signs from the least dry limb, wax and tallow, bound into volunteer shoots near the seep. Hope is a graft, not all take. Some dew. Nights cooler. She left sage twist, crow feather, red clay bead on the porch rail. road magic to keep sickness off thresholds. He left coffee grounds for poultice grit. Exchange built language. Sometimes he woke to her moving quiet, learning history by scar. Bullet ding in kettle rim, child notch in door jam, iron scorch where a lamp tipped. Memory witnessed does not rot. By the time moon thinned, the ranch wore her marks. Post double-notched. Seed jars relabeled in a tighter hand. Saddle cinch hung in an Apache quick knot easy to cut. His wife's shawl moved from trunk to peg for 3 days before going back. Testing ghosts. Word of the auction road trails. Freight men talked. Papers twisted truth. He pressed a receipt flat and saw her listed only as female native approx 18. No band. Nothing law would honor. He folded it into his wife's scripture book at the page where a stranger woman found new land and stayed. She smoked sweetgrass in a coffee tin lid one night and wafted it through rafters, driving out old air. Smoke curled around his wife's shawl and did not falter. After, the rooms felt less like shrine, more like shelter. He slept through till dawn. Windmill repair took 2 days. She climbed, he steadied. Bolts rusted to lace. They cut washers from stove lid, grease with tallow. Wind caught, pump chuffed, brown water rose. Each laughed once, sharp, surprised. He carved a new brand plate. Split heart over 4 small wing strokes. She pressed her thumb in pitch beside his knife mark. Brand registered nowhere, but here. Cold nights they shared the porch step, boots touching. Coyotes yipped roll call. She tipped her head as if hearing riders far beyond sound range. He listened to and began to hear what emptiness sounds like when it starts to fill. That evening she brought the bead strand that once hit her ankle burn and looped it over the door nail where he kept bridles. Not gift, not surrender. Parked where she could take it again. He set his spare hat on the same nail. 2 claims, same wood. Ridge riders came closer. 1 shot kicked dust. He cleaned the rifle slow on the porch where they could see. She ground ochre and painted 4 red wings on the door lintel. Same pattern as her bead disc. House marked Apache now. Town talks of the marshal still held questions, and men who lose silver come asking. Law rides slow out here. Weather slip schedule. Grain low. Before full moon, she stacked stones across the North Arroyo to clatter hoofs. He hung a bell from the dead mare's harness. Fort from salvage. Dust. The place no longer held just his grief. It held preparations. 2 track lines over every path. Air charged with a home not admitted out loud. Home begins where work lines cross and stay crossed. Dust plumes lifted on the west horizon while she was at the seep. For riders this time. Not a pass. A coming. She wiped mud, picked up the carbine, and walked to stand by his shoulder at the yard rail. Side by side counts a statement enough. Men from town rode in under a heat glare that flattened distance and made metal wink like water. 4 of them. The freight driver who'd laughed on the trail, a gambler with a green silk sleeve and a debt mark burned his cheek, the marshal's thin deputy carrying rolled papers he waved like a flag he hoped could do the shooting for him, and a stock buyer whose eyes kept sliding past Riker's hand to the woman in the yard. Dust boiled off their horses. The windmill clacked slow. Somewhere under porch shade the sway-back mare coughed. She stepped from the seat with mud on her fingers and walked to the yard rail, carbine down but ready, and stood level with the ranch hand. Side by side counts louder than any oath. The deputy read words. Property transfer pending review. Misrepresentation of sale item. Suspected hostile captive. Fees due. Custody revert. Marshal hold. Each phrase road breath meant to sound official. Paper had town weight, but no range teeth. The gambler spat tobacco toward the porch and offered to buy the Indian back at half what was paid on auction day, since she was injured goods. The freight man wanted compensation for time lost when Riker's hand had stolen labor that might have been contracted to stage. Talk, numbers, leverage. No one asked her name. While they circled words, she walked away. Slow. No hurry to prove she feared them. She went to the tack wall, took down a spade shovel, crossed the yard, and cut a line in dry earth from wellhead to porch step. Heel deep, crisp. At midline, she set 3 stones, 2 to the side, 1 forward, forming a split heart. Then she dipped fingers in red seep clay, smeared 4 wing marks above the door lintel. Same pattern that lived in beads at her throat. Apache claim sign, household bound, protection mark. She faced the riders only after the sign dried dark. To cross that line now meant stepping through a marker people read as family ground. Men who had traded among tribes knew. The stock buyer's jaw jumped. Riker's hand laid the auction receipt flat across the deputy's papers so Son could bleach ink. Female native approximate 18. No ban, no bond, no indenture clause. He tapped the marshal stamp, then the payment total. Silver gone, drafts gone, sale clean. The deputy argued chain of custody. Riker's hand pointed to the broken collar bolt hanging from his porch nail like a spur trophy. Law said once bolt cut under martial eye and fee paid. Transfer stood unless a judge voided. Judge rode circuit months out. Desert delays kill paperwork. The gambler's sleeve twitched near his pistol. The ranch hand did not rise. He simply wiped oil from the long rifle slow and racked the lever once. Message clear. She moved again. From her pouch, she drew 4 black seeds and pressed them into the cut lines damp, then sprinkled seep water from a tin dipper across the trench. Seed and dust is promise. Promise binds watchers. She set her bead strand, the same that covered her auction burn, on the porch rail beside his spare hat, knotting them together at one end. 2 claims tied. The freight driver stopped grinning. Words failed first. Gunn thought about speaking. The deputy lifted papers higher as shield. Wind slapped them flat against his face. He swore, dropped them. 1 sheet skated the yard and fetched against the wet clay trench, soaking. Ink bled, law blurred. The gambler nudged his horse to step over the mark. The mare shied, ears cutting back. Animals feel lines people pretend not to see. She lifted the carbine, not aimed at men but at the hanging triangle by the barn, and snapped 1 shot. Iron rang. Echo hard across basin. Accuracy argument closed. Silence held while alkali dust drifted. The stock buyer eased back first. He could count odds. The freight man followed, muttering about schedules. The deputy gathered wet paper, swore he'd return with proper authority, and wheeled out. The gambler leaned from saddle, spooned a curse, and said come autumn he'd see the girl run in Prescott where they pay high for wild blood. Then he flicked his reins and left. Threats trail long. Wind takes most before they land. They watched dust plumes thin against sky. She did not lower the carbine until the last rider dropped behind basalt. When she turned, her face was bloodless. Only then did her knees show the shake she would not give in front of town men. He took the weapon, set it butt down, and opened both hands palm up between them. Are you hurt? She rolled her sleeve, a line of seep clay across skin where she had marked the trench. No blood. He nodded. She nodded back. Treaty sealed. After, work changed. They hardened line marks with post ends. Strung wire knee-high coated in grease to tangle boots. Set tin shards aflash. She painted more red wings under eaves. He rode the base and edges dropping rock, cairns away her people leave travel sign. Riders who knew would read warning. Riders who didn't would wonder who else watched. At night she taught him sky bearings the Apache way. Wind stars, coyote stars, storm tails, by pointing, not speech. He answered with weld depths and clay layers, where alkali sits under crust, where flood takes fence. Knowledge traded across culture makes land hold both names. One evening, she stood at the gravestake of his wife and laid 2 items, a crow feather tipped white and a kernel of the seed she planted in the trench. Asking room. He brought his wife's tin heart down, polished it, wired it beside the stone ring she had built in part 3. Now the rise held dual sign, white tin, Apache rock. Grief set side by side, so neither erased the other. That night he slept inside. She moved her bedroll to the doorway threshold, half in, half out, guard and guest. Food still thin. He rode to town alone to trade hides and fetch salt. Risk he took so her face stayed off Main Street while talk cooled. He returned to find fence marks multiplied and new track lines laid. She had rechanneled seep water through brush baffles, leaving no straight approach from the west. She had also hung the broken auction collar from the gate post, cut into 2 open arcs nailed apart like wings. Anyone riding in would know the meaning. not stock any longer. Late heat pressed wildfires close. Smoke turned sunset's blood glass. They worked in red light, shoulders touching when lifting pipe, hands brushing when passing ladles. No speech. Each contact a spark thrown to dry tinder neither named. One night wind tore canvas loose. They caught it together, fell in dust, laughed once very near, then both stepped back fast, as if spooked by how easy closeness came. Ridge watchers kept testing. Shots at distance. Hoof echoes after dark. A boot print where none should be by the north arroyo alarm stones. She set a snare, found it sprung. Hair caught black, hat brim or horsetail unclear. He oiled the rifle nightly. The waiting pulled them tight as rawhide drying. When the first of her trench seeds broke dust, thin green thread, they both crouched to see. He shaded it. She touched soil around with 2 fingers and pressed down to pack moisture. That shoot stood on the line. She cut the day the riders came. Plants do not argue law. They witness who waters. Storm season gathered weight. Letters would take months. Deputies forget. Gamblers remember. But the claim had been made, by bead, by seed, by rifle ring on iron, by 2 names tied on 1 nail. Whatever came next would not find them strangers. The next hard test ride with rain and fire, and word from town that more want what they cannot have. Home holds as long as the ground you draw stays yours. We see if it does. Storm heat stacked for days before it broke. Lightning walked the buttes like men with torches, striking greasewood, running flame in sheets across the chalk basin. Smoke rolled low. Wind hammered sparks sideways under eaves. He hauled wet burlap. She shoveled fire line, both moving in a furnace roar that made talk useless. When the roof pitch caught, she climbed, tied in with lariat, and slapped mud over open seam while he pumped brown water till the handle screamed. Fire skimmed past, ate the dead orchard, and spent itself at the seat bed she'd stoned in Part 3. The line she cut in front of the porch, seed trench, clay mark, held damp. Flame split and ran both sides. House lived. Morning showed black sticks where orchard stood and fresh track rings and ash. Riders had come under smoke. Boot prints at the north alarm stones. One deep heel dragged beside the collar wings nailed to the gate. The gambler, maybe, or men he sent. No bodies. Just sign, watched. Work turned urgent. Fences reset, ash raked, roof patched with burned tin. She spread save seed and flats inside the barn so sprouts could start under shade. He rode to the spring mouth above the basin and dug a catch pond. She lined it with hide, sealed seams and tallow, floated chips to show leaks swirl. Water held, green chance. Days stretched. She moved fully into the house. Bedroll first, then pouch, then bead disc hung on the same nail as a spare hat. 2 claims long tied became habit. When wind rattled the door, the beads clicked the hat brim like talk in another room. Nights they shared coffee at the table where his wife's comb lay. He slid the comb into a box and set the box on the shelf. Not hidden, not center, room made. She touched the lid once in passing. A nod to the ghost who yielded space. Shoots took. The trench line from well to porch lifted thin green thread. For sprouts where she pressed the black seed the day the riders came. She kept them shaded with broken pot shards, watered by hand from the seep dipper. He joked without words by moving the shards when she turned. She moved them back. Game of claimed stewardship. One evening he carved a stake, burned a split heart over 4 wing strokes, and drove it at trench center. Brand born. Law rippled back slow. A rider from town brought word. The marshal gone south after cattle thieves. Deputy off payroll. Gambler lost his table stake and lit out. Paper threats thinned with distance. Gossip thickened instead. The Apache girl still up at Riker. The hand gone soft. The ranch marked with red wings. Freight men started leaving parcels. Salt cake, broken harness. At the Arroyo Fork, no charge. Superstition hedges bets when Apache sign, and white crosses share a hill. She made medicine runs at dawn, bringing back willow bark, creosote gum, a root she dried and ground for fever. When his old wound flared, she packed a crack with paste, wrapped and bound his arm tight to a board, then sat the pump till water came brown then clear. She kept him under shade 3 days, though work called. He let her. Trust wears a body down before it lets it rest. One night Coyote circled close and would not quit. Something dead out past a basin. She and he saddled and rode moonlight. Half-mile north they found a horse down, arrow and rib black with age, on the bounty string. Thrown lame since auction day and limped out to die. In the saddlebags lay green silk torn, the gambler's sleeve, and a folded wanted sheet naming raiders unrelated to her band. Proof no one cared who was sold so long as money turned. They buried the horse, burned the paper, took the arrowhead, and nailed it above the door under the red wing marks. Memory of what she was taken for. Warning to who might try again. Season tipped. Summer storm seeded lake grass. Jackrabbits fattened. The mare she saved in part. 3 carried a foal by a stray Mustang to the jump fence. Lean blood met wild blood and swelled her sides. He built a pen close so he could watch nights. She painted 4 white dots over the gate. Watch her eyes, so predators would think twice. When the foal dropped, she steadied the mare's head while he pulled. Once clear, the foal staggered to stand under both their hands. He heated the new brand plate. She pressed wet cloth. Together they set split heart forewings into damp hide. Smoke curled, foal bawled, claim spread. Autumn's first chill drifted before any yellow leaf. Their basin had few trees to mark season, so they measured by sky. Orion low meant frost soon. Frost meant berry seed deeper. She taught him to mound earth Apache style. Wind break low, warmth trapped. He taught her to wait 10 over row, and so flood could not peel them. The line between her trench sprouts and his old garden widened into a single field, crooked, stubborn, alive. Grief shifted shape. He still walked the grave stake where the tin heart shone, but now he set tools there when sharpened, as if showing finished work. She added stones when storms undercut the ring. 2 names tended one rise. Some nights he spoke half aloud. Not to her, not to the dead, more to the air that joined them, and she sat within hearing, stringing beads, letting words fall. Other nights she smoked sweetgrass. He let the scent wash old cloth. Memories did not compete. They braided. Cold rain finally came slate and straight. Roof held. Tanks filled. Mud sucked boots. She laughed at the mess and pushed him out into it. He hauled her back by the wrist. Both slid. Both splashed. A tangle ended with her palm flat on his chest and his breath against her cheek. They froze as if lightning struck. Neither moved away. Contact stayed until rain eased. After, inside, she placed her bead disc not on the nail, but on his folded blanket. Invitation. He set his hat over both. Answer. Winter light thinned and sharpened color. Work narrowed, defeating stock. Cutting ice skim, mending gear. Evenings long. Shoulders brushed often. Hands found reasons to pass things too close. Still no words that named what built between them. The land recorded for them. When the first trench plant tasseled seed, he cut half and poured into her palm. She poured half back into his. New planting stock mix, so neither could claim pure line. Spring signs edged early, blue gnats, soft tips on sage. She walked out alone one dawn and came back at sunup, leading 3 riders painted in travel dust. Mescalero kin, band cousins who had followed sign, counted loss, tracked rumor of a girl sold at border town, then vanished. They studied the red wings over his door, the tin heart beside stone ring, the split brand on foal hide, the braid of bead and hat on one nail. They read story. Taken, held claimed, released into family ground. They left gifts, a pouch of seed, a horsehair rope, a carved bone token cut in the shape of 4 wings. They left her by choice. Choice is the only chain that holds. Planting came full. Together they laid rows, one marking seasons, one marking water depth. He signed the deed transfer when the land office wagon finally looped through. Riker Estate to joint stewardship, Mark X, witness deputy new hired. Where it asked name for second steward, she drew 4 wing marks. Clerk stared, shrugged, wrote Apache female. The paper crude. The truth carved better in post and seed. Red sky close a year. Sun gone behind dust. Clouds lit from below like coals in a forge. They stood at the seatbeds, watching light stack fire along the horizon. He reached and took her wrist where the old auction scar lay faint under bead stain. She turned her hand and laced fingers into his. No speech. The ranch, once empty, held two ghosts who chose to stay and were ghosts no longer. Story ends here. What grows after his crop herd, maybe children, maybe only seasons counted in posts and bead lines. Whatever comes. The day she was sold ended the minute someone paid not a own but a free, and stayed long enough to build ground worth standing on. If this quiet Western move you, please drop a comment what hit you hardest, and subscribe so you don't miss the next ride across the dust.